husband used to say all the time during the campaign in 1992 that I covered, he used to say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Put it a different way. Wouldn't it be insane of you to run for office again?
Well, I well remember that saying because it happens to be one of our favorites. Well, you have to be a little bit crazy to run for president, let me just put it like that, because you have to be so totally immersed and so convinced that you can bring something to that office, that your vision about what you can do to help Americans, and I see them. I mean, I've had people come through the line who tell me their stories about losing their job, about what's happened since they got health care that has helped them, and I hear this. So I know that my life of service is the biggest reason why I would consider doing this, because I would want to continue serving. But I also know that it's a very hard job, and it's a job that you have to be totally consumed by, and that's kind of the definition of being a little bit crazy, I think.
Chris, we have a key race alert right now. We do have some breaking news about when Hillary Clinton will officially launch her 2016 campaign.
You have to be a special kind of person to run for president. A special kind of person who believes they're special and should be the leader of the free world.
I believe in the power of millions of courageous conservatives rising up to reignite the promise of America. And that is why today I am announcing that I'm running for president of the United States.
You have to subject yourself, your family, your loved ones, every piece of your past to scrutiny, to ridicule, to the public.
Business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Let me just make a brief comment and be happy to take a few questions. We don't have an endless amount of time. I've got to get back.
Hours spent shaking hands, giving interviews, shouting the same stump speeches.
We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction.
Smiling, waving, making calls, asking people for money. And that's just the beginning. Because if you're elected, well, how will you deliver?
Sadly, the American dream is dead. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before, and we will make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome to our 10th lecture. Today we are talking about campaigns and elections. At this point, you've heard the speeches, you've seen the viral moments.
No question, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump.
The interviews, the conventions, the money. We'll cover political parties, media, and interest groups' influence in more detail next time. However, what do you have to do to run for office? What are some common trends in campaigns? What separates US elections from others? What separates running for Congress versus the president? What is it that attracts us to certain people? And not just attracts us, but what is it that makes us believe someone can represent us and actually do the job we want them to do? What is that X factor? And most importantly, do campaigns or elections even matter? So what even is a campaign? A campaign is an organized drive for a political goal. It can be for a proposition or a candidate. It's to provide voters information to choose a proposition or a candidate.
First, there's the candidate.
It's very different than many campaigns that I've seen.
Then there's the strategist behind the candidate. And the campaign manager who leads a 24/7 political operation with one goal: winning the presidency.
You know, life is a cascade of phone calls.
I think it's a different place than when I went there.
Emails, meetings.
We have a few more that we're going to roll out over the next few days.
It's kind of a series of rolling conversations.
Rewrite that as a more generic.
All day long, between us and the candidate.
You ready to rock and roll? There we go. All right.
Between us and the states and between the staff here.
Tomorrow he'll be in Muncie, and then he's here in Chicago.
Constant conversations that take place between Central Command in Chicago and what's known as the Bubble, an army of traveling press and campaign staffers who on this day were touring the next battleground state of Indiana.
There are two crucial factors in US elections. One, getting nominated. Two, getting elected. We have the primary, where you're competing to be nominated within your party, and then the general, when you get elected to office. To get nominated means getting your name on the ballot. Winning your party's nomination for either the presidency or Congress requires an individual effort in the United States. You decide to run. You raise money. You appeal to voters. In most European nations, the political party decides whether to allow you to run. While your political party is still a telling label in the United States, in some countries, the party as an organization is all that matters. So to campaign or to run for office in the United States is first an individual effort. Now, what office you're running for has different criteria and pressures, so I want to point out 3 differences between running for Congress and running for President of the United States. First, presidential races are more competitive than those in the House of Representatives or the Senate. One reason behind that is, of course, as president, you're trying to appeal to people across the US, not just in your state or district. So in a typical presidential race, the winner gets normally 55% of the vote. In a typical House race, it's more than 60%. Another reason is people in Congress have no term limits and can run as many times as they want to. Oftentimes, the incumbent, meaning the person already holding an elective office, wins. In fact, 90% of the time, the incumbent wins again. Second, less people vote for congressional office than for president. Low voter turnout means the candidates in congressional races must appeal to the more motivated and partisan voter. Partisan meaning loyal to the party.
America's the greatest country in the world. We need conservatives in Washington that will keep it that way. I'm running to stop gun control.
Empower schools and teachers with non-lethal self-defense tools like this can of pepper spray. Trust me, this will stop anyone in their tracks. For less than $1 per person in the US, we can have a secured canister of pepper spray in every classroom in America.
It's just unbearable. It's like lava in your eyes.
Third, a candidate for Congress can deny they are responsible for the mess in Washington, even when they are an incumbent. Congress members run as individuals, even denouncing the Congress they're part of. It's part of the reason why 90% of incumbents are reelected. It's everyone else in Congress who's the problem, not your representative, all the others. Presidents, on the other hand, are responsible for whatever goes wrong, not only in government, but in the nation, even when they're not technically responsible. Gas prices go up? Blame the president. Wildfire relief? The president! You fall and hurt your knee? President! However, if the president is popular in the party, any candidate has no problem riding on the president's coattails. What that means is, as a candidate, you are basking in the president's popularity in order to win more votes, like Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida.
Everyone knows my husband Ron DeSantis is endorsed by President Trump, but he's also an amazing dad. Ron loves playing with the kids.
Build the wall. So, how do you run for president? While technically you have to be at least 35, a natural-born citizen, and 14 years a resident, it's a bit more complicated. First, you have to get mentioned. You gotta get that rumor mill going. To get your campaign recognition, you need to get mentioned. Common ways to do that is to let reporters know off the record that you're considering to run for president. Another is to travel around the country making speeches. One way of doing this is through book tours. Looking at you, Obama, Clinton, Sanders, Biden. Another way is to already have a famous name. Bush, Clinton, Trump. You're already in the public eye. People will pay attention. Finally, you can be identified through a major piece of legislation, like how nearly every Democratic senator did supporting the Green New Deal. Second, you need time. In the US, our election cycle lasts for at least 2 years publicly, and another year most likely strategizing if you are the right fit for office. Right now, despite it being a presidential election year, make no mistake, the next candidates are already being groomed. Oftentimes, even a lesser-known candidate this round campaigns knowing they won't win, but to get their name recognized for the next time. Third, you need money. Lots of money. for travel expenses, staff, political strategists, press secretaries, speechwriters, ads, commercials, press, advertising specialists, actual headquarters. In all, from the two main political candidates, we are looking at $800 million at least spent individually, and around $2 billion just to say, pick me. This is why the majority of your staff's time is spent fundraising, and why PAC and Super PAC money is so darn tempting. But more on that next time. Fourth, you need an organization. Once again, a staff of fundraisers, lawyers, accountants, travel schedulers, press secretaries, advertising specialists, direct mail companies, pollsters, all of who must be paid, and plus thousands of volunteers.
Because what you guys have done means that the work that I'm doing is important. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of all of you. And what you described.
Finally, you need a strategy, a theme. Why are you running? Why you? What makes you think not only that this nation needs help, but that you're the one who can do the job? Will you run as an outsider, as a knowledgeable, well-experienced force? Will you run on hope, on fear, on change, or traditional values? These are just a few broad questions to think about. So while yes, you can run for president, you also need to be well-known, with 2 or 3 years free, with $800 million, hundreds of staff members, and a reason to run. For the House of Representatives, you have to be at least 25, a citizen for 7 years, and live in the state you represent, not the district. And for the Senate, you have to be 30 and a citizen for 9 years and live in the state you represent. If you want to get on the ballot, you need a threshold of voter signatures and a filing fee that varies depending on the state. In California, you need at least 2,000 verified voter signatures and $1,740 to be on the ballot. Most members of Congress run personal campaigns, and ultimately most claim that they're going to clean up Washington if re-elected.
President Donald Trump is delivering results each and every day. The stock market's up and unemployment's down. We are draining the swamp and rebuilding our military.
They run for Congress by running against it. In the US, when you run for federal office, you run 2 elections, not just one. The first is primary elections, designed to choose your party's nominee. The second is the general election that picks the winner who will hold office. Now, this part is important. To win a primary, you are trying to strictly appeal to that party's voters. What that means is, if you are part of a Republican primary, you are trying to be more conservative, and during a Democratic primary, you are trying to be more liberal than others. During a primary, if you are running, your goal is to gain party delegates. Delegates, like electoral voters, are usually made up of local party politicians or party members who vote on the behalf of how your state voted. It's a mini electoral college. And each state is awarded a certain amount of delegates based on how loyal your state has voted for that party in the past. Each state has their own primary election until either the candidates drop out or a candidate has enough delegates to be nominated. Last thing, as a voter, if you want to vote for a party candidate, you have to be registered as a member of that party. This was confusing in 2016 to many independent Bernie Sanders supporters who wanted to vote for him in the primary but found out they couldn't because they weren't registered Democrats.
1, 2, you know what to do. Feel the burn. Feel the burn.
The reason why they have this in place is to prevent another party from interfering with their party's preference. Our first look at seeing who a party's nomination will be is in the Iowa caucus. A lot of media attention, dare I say too much, is given to Iowa. At the Iowa State Fair is where candidates get to show how similar they are to their constituents and that they like fried food just as much as you. But Iowa also has a caucus. What is a caucus? It's when party members join together in a room and debate about who the next candidate should be. They pick sides or corners of the room, and for those undecided, they try to get them to join.
Cheerleading, competition, and some confusion.
We merge with them, they're not viable.
A glimpse inside what caucus night will look like.
What is the strategy going into next week? Well, we're gonna out-organize, outlast, and out-hype all the other corners.
Organizing is the name of the game. Caucus goers gather in groups based on their top choice for president. But to be viable on caucus night, a candidate needs the support of at least 15% of people in the room.
Every caucus goer needs a card.
In this mock caucus, only Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg met that threshold in the first round, leaving other candidate supporters scrambling.
How stressful is this?
Very stressful.
This Iowa tradition dates back to the 70s, launching Democratic presidential candidates from Jimmy Carter to Barack Obama.
It's a very messy system that less and less states enforce. I also want to point out Iowa isn't first because it's important because it's first. And it's actually incredibly rare that who Iowa chooses even ends up being the party's nomination. Just this past year, they chose Pete Buttigieg for the Democratic Party, and in 2016, the Republican primary, they chose Ted Cruz.
Tonight is a victory for courageous conservatives across Iowa.
Now, quick fun fact, in the 1800s, it used to be frowned upon and seen as an act of desperation to travel to give speeches. The media and people used to go to a candidate's home, and the candidate would give their speech in the comforts of their front porch. This was called a front porch campaign. Furthermore, candidates largely remained silent. It was the work of the political party to speak on the behalf of the candidate. One of the first presidential candidates who was known for touring to give speeches was William Jennings Bryan, who ran 3 times. One critic called the tactic like begging for the presidency, as a tramp might beg for pie. However, I do like pie. In his last presidential campaign, Bryan reportedly told a friend, "I don't mind talking, but I do mind being dragged over half a continent." While he never became president, he did change the tactics to become president. Overall, say you win the primary. You're nominated at the convention, balloon celebrations galore. You are now the party. Then, in order to appeal to more voters outside of your party, you tend to walk back a lot of your policies. To get your party's nomination, you are moving to more ideological extremes. To win the general election, you are moving more towards an ideological center. It's why Joe Biden now welcomes Republican support and is constantly trying to separate himself from Bernie Sanders and more progressive beliefs like the Green New Deal and defunding the police and universal health care. This brings us to 2 types of issues during elections: a position issue and a balance issue. A position issue is when rival candidates have opposing views on a question that also divides voters. Think the war in Iraq, abortion, or defunding the police. These are issues where the goal or belief is not shared by voters. A balance issue, on the other hand, is one where the public and candidates have similar goals. For example, everyone wants a strong economy. It's not like a candidate yet is arguing for more unemployment. However, the means to get there is different, and it's up to the people to decide who is most trustworthy. The 2 most important balance issues of this presidential election is economic recovery and the response to the pandemic. Who does the public trust more to keep our jobs stable and end this virus? This is when a candidate says, "Trust me." And this is where subjectivity and personal biases shape an election. Why people trust someone more than another, how they determine what they want, is a reflection on an individual's values. And sometimes it's unexplainable. But this is now the heart of campaigning. As much as we want substance, we want to be reassured protections, stability, growth. You can give a speech, but how can you ensure that I'm listening? And in the public eye of scrutiny, as a candidate, you have everything to lose.
Have you taken a cognitive
No,
test?
I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying before you got in this program, you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not. What do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you...
Why the hell would he take a test? I think he provided the answer right there, Matt.
Yeah, first of all, okay, boomer, nobody says junkie anymore. When someone suffers from, substance abuse issues, we try to extend the hand of grace. I would think Joe Biden might know that given his own family history. But
though press and debates are free, you risk a slip of the tongue. You may have spent 30 years of your life in public service.
Joe Biden's effort in politics here looks less like a presidential campaign and more like elder abuse.
Okay. You may have thought through your position on the issues with great care and have rehearsed your speeches until the dogs start to howl. But just one verbal blunder, and suddenly the whole campaign focuses on your misstep. Because of the fear of a slip, because the voters do not want to hear long, fact-filled speeches about complex issues, because general election campaigns are fights to attract the centrist moderate voter, candidates rely on a stock speech of the campaign theme, platform goals, and applause-getting lines. We'll look further into how parties and media and money all do their darndest to shape the custodians of our democracy. But at the end of the day, if you're running, it's on you. How will you connect to the people? So, do we need campaigns? If people vote along party lines, and if the majority just look at the national economic conditions, what's the point of a campaign? Is it all sound and fury, signifying nothing? These are a few things campaigns do. 1, they reawaken party loyalties within voters. Campaigns make us take sides. Suddenly, we get wrapped up in this great cheerleading effort. 2, campaigns give voters a chance to see how candidates handle pressure. How do you handle 18-hour days, mudslinging, your personal family history being attacked, all while asking about your visions of the future? Do you fight back, or do you rise above? And what do voters want to see? 3, campaigns allow voters an opportunity to judge the character and core values of a candidate. Still, cynics complain that elections are meaningless. No matter who wins, crooks, incompetents, or self-serving politicians still hold office. Public policy more or less remains the same. One student each year asks, if you didn't pay attention to the media, can you think of any way you're personally impacted by the government we have? While this past year may be an exception, you have to look outside of yourself. We are living in change, constantly, and we don't necessarily see the difference until we look back. While change in our government is slow, change is inevitable. The platforms of our parties are very different than they were just a few years ago. Our policies are changing, even as we speak. We are constantly in a tug-of-war, our foot on the gas and brake at the same time. But if you ever just wonder about if elections are effective, does it matter who's elected? Take a look back and ask yourself how we got here today. Thank you for watching. Godspeed.